Hi everybody, welcome back to the What Now workshop. This is part 5 of lamppost builds and a decorative wall mount for an antique rifle. Today we are going to be putting a clear coat on our two pieces to finalize this project before we mount it. So let's get started. So what I've got here is I've got some polyurethane, just some clear coat, and I'm going to be brushing this on and letting it dry. Obviously, I'm going to do one part. The other piece, I'm going to do that another time, but just to kind of show you how we do this. So let's get started. I've got my brush, and I'm going to start clear coating this. And I kind of want to start in a certain area, that way I can hang on to it. You see it kind of goes on kind of a milky white, but it will dry a nice, clear, glossy color. You don't have to worry about wiping anything off. And just like the stain, a little bit goes a long way. You don't have to use a lot on these pieces. So if it runs a little bit, it's okay. Just make sure you don't have any drips. This will be taken care of anyway. So I've got putting on a nice even coat. Again, it's supposed to look milky white. Once it dries, it'll be nice and glossy. We just want to make sure we don't have any noticeable drips is all. So I'll put that on there. And I'm doing this part first because that way I won't have to worry about hanging on to anything. As you can see, I'm not wearing gloves for this, but you don't really need to use gloves. This stuff washes off pretty easily. Unlike stain. Stain, in the name right there, it says it stains. So we're going to go ahead and coat this. This side. Now here's where it kind of gets a little tricky because I have to do the outside edges. And there's really nothing to it. Just basically brushing it on. And I'm kind of turning this in my hand here. And this gloss, this polyurethane is going to, basically it's going to protect it. Kind of preserve it. It's not like this is going to get used, meaning, you know, it's not like a piece of furniture that's going to have drinks set on it or stuff like that. So it's a wall mount. So once the rifle's hanging on it, that's really all you need to worry about. And I'm going to kind of go with the grain here a little bit to work it in. And let's see, we got something here. put a little dab back on that. There we go. So again, pretty simple. Not really hard to do. It's just like painting. All right, so we're gonna let this dry. And once I'm done coating the other piece and that piece is dried, then we are going to be mounting this inside where it will sit forever and ever. There we go. So that's all to that. Stay tuned. Next thing we're going to be doing is mounting this to the wall and finishing this project. So my pieces are dried. I've got them clear coated. I've also added a piece of felt that is attached there on this piece as to not scratch the rifle, as well as this piece. So I glued those on the other day. They are, again, they're clear coated, nice and shiny, sturdy, and we're gonna mount them today and we're gonna get this project finally finished. Okay, so we're about to hang our brackets on the wall. The first thing you need to do is determine your height. So I've determined my height to be about right here, which is approximately 80 inches off the floor. Your height might depend on how high you want to hang something. But the other thing you need to do first is you need to find your studs, where to mount it to. Now, some of you probably already know this, but exterior studs are usually positioned 16 inches apart, where interior studs are 2 foot apart. Depending on if it's a bearing wall or not. If it's a bearing wall, they are also 16 inches, but in our case, this is a non-bearing wall. It separates one room from another. Therefore, they're 2 foot on center. I've determined that by 2 things. One, I'm using a stud finder, which is basically a magnet, and you just run it up and down the drywall and it will stick where it needs to be. That's where the screws or nails are, and that's how you know where the studs are. You can find many different types of stud finders at your hardware store, but I find that this one works the best. Now, the other way is by taking a tape measure and measuring from this spot and going 2 feet to our next spot. I've done both. I've confirmed that this is where a stud's at, and I have found my other stud to be right about here. So again, if I take my tape measure and I set my tape measure there and I come across, you know, it's not exactly 2 foot, but you get the idea. They are 2 foot apart. So the next thing we're going to be doing is I'm going to be drilling some holes from where I put the nails in from my brackets. And once I do that, then I'm going to be mounting the brackets with some heavy duty screws. Okay, so my holes are drilled. I've got my pilot holes drilled into the studs, and now it's time to mount this piece. Now what I've done is I've started the screws just enough to penetrate the drywall so I can set those into place just like that. And I'm going to get my drill and go ahead and start running these in. So this will be a little bit loud. All right, so that one's in. Now what I need to do is I need to take a level just to double check. And since it's a little hard to read, what I do is I take a white piece of paper and I slide it behind there and let it reflect off the light so I can see it a little bit better. And that actually looks pretty plumb. So I'll go ahead and run the other screw through. actually kick it over just a little bit. Okay, so there's our first bracket. Now I need to do the exact same thing for the second bracket. Okay, so our brackets are now attached to the walls. What I used was 3-inch screws to go through 3/4 of wood, 1/2 inch of drywall, and then the rest into the stud. So that will secure these. Now it's time to set the rifle up there and finish this off. Okay, so we have our antique rifle finally mounted on these fine pieces of wood that we made. You can see how it sits nice and flat. Well, kinda. No, I'm just kidding. This is a joke. I'm actually gonna get the real rifle. My son wanted to have a little fun with this, but looks pretty cool up there. So we're gonna actually put the real one up here. Okay, here is our actual antique rifle. Finally mounted, finally on the wall where we want it, finally done. Although we're not actually done. There's still one more thing that I want to do, and that was as a request from my wife. She wanted the case that came with it attached above the wall, so we're going to do that real quick, and then we're actually going to be finished with this. Okay, so this is the finished product of our wall mounts for the antique rifle. We've got the antique rifle set up there, and my wife wanted me to actually incorporate the sheath or the case that her father, which is my father-in-law, actually made for this rifle. He's no longer with us, but this is one of the things that I wanted to do to not only show off this wonderful piece of machinery or firearm, but also to kind of honor him. And it also goes with our decor in our living room. So I think it's a wonderful rifle, and this case is just unbelievable. And so I wanted to include that. But all in all, this project is done. Okay, so our project of building a wall mount for an antique rifle is finished. Keep in mind that along the way you might change things, you might decide to do things a little bit different, and that's okay, but just take your time. There were many changes that I made during the process, but the idea was still there. So one piece of advice: don't rush through it. Take your time, and you'll be a lot more happier for it. I appreciate you watching this video. If you liked the video that you saw, or you have any comments, make sure you hit the like button down below. Make sure you put some comments. If there's something specific that you want to see, go ahead and let me know. I'd be happy to help you out. So for Lamppost Builds, I'm Jeff, and I'll see you next time in the What Now workshop.